All right, everyone, welcome back to the video version of the podcast. Today, I can't believe I'm saying this, I am talking to Chris Shiflett from the Foo Fighters. No, I did not stutter. That is Chris Shiflett from the Foo Fighters. I can't hardly believe this is happening. I've been wanting to do this episode for so long, and it was a real treat. It was even better than I expected. Really, this was truly an awesome episode. It actually published a few months ago on the audio platforms. I'm a little late to getting the video up, but hey, better late than never, you know? That's just how it goes sometimes. But if you are more of an audio podcast person, that gets published every Monday on the dot. So if you go to Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you like to get your audio podcasts, you can check out over 300 episodes of the audio podcast, which is this same conversation, just in audio-only form. And there are some great episodes back there. I've talked to everyone from Frank Iero from My Chemical Romance to Kyle Gass from Tenacious D, and a whole bunch of pedal builders, luthiers, string makers, all kinds of different people. It is honestly the thing I like to do the most. It is my favorite kind of content to produce, and it is all there, and it's all free whenever you want to go check out the audio versions. It's been going since 2015, so there is a lot there to absorb. And if you want to help support this show and you want to help keep this going and help get more guests and just help everything just keep on trucking along, and you want to get bonus episodes, you can go to patreon.com/tonemob, where for just $5 a month, you will get access to extra episodes every week that usually is an extended interview with that week's guest. And I love doing those. Some of my very best content is back there on Patreon, and there are hundreds of hours there for you if you so choose. If not, please just tell somebody about this. Send it to somebody. Just grab that link and send it to your friend, because I'm sure they want to hear me ramble to Chris Shiflett from the Foo Fighters. I'm sure that's the case. Okay, enough business, but I do need to note something before we jump into this episode. So this one's a little different. I experimented with a 2-camera setup, and the auto switching back and forth between the two didn't really work that well. The main one that's on my face is the one on my MacBook, and it's not a very good camera. Additionally, I'm recording this in the Stringjoy factory. I was down there in Nashville doing some work, and I needed to kick Scott out of his office for a little bit so I could record this episode. So you may hear some machines. We talk about that a little bit in the episode. I'm not in my normal recording environment for this one, so it's going to look and sound a little bit different than what you're used to, but I think you will still get the point, and I think it is still a very solid episode, so I'm glad to put it out. But let's stop dilly-dallying. Let's stop messing around. Let's get into this episode with Chris Shiflett. Here we go. Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Tone Mob Podcast, the show about guitar stuff occasionally, sometimes. I'm your host, Blake Weiland. And with me today, I have Mr. Chris Shiflett of the Foo Fighters and so many other things. Like, we're going to talk about all that. I talked to him a week ago on Chasing Tone, and now we're here doing this, so pretty stoked about it.
Yeah, epic. Thanks for having me. It's funny. I didn't actually, I didn't realize that it was you doing this one as well. So it's awesome. So it's like we already have a rapport.
Exactly.
Nice. Yeah.
I meant to tell you when we got done recording, and then Brian accidentally ended the call before I got a chance to. And so I was like, by the way, it's going to be me. And
I will tell you, Brian was kind enough. He sent me a nice box of pedals after that last interview. So I'm stoked. Going to be working my way through some new tones.
There you go.
It's funny. I'll tell you, I have learned in doing some of these more guitar centric and like tone and gear, pedals, guitar, all that. There's some podcasts and stuff that have been more sort of centered around that. I've learned a valuable lesson, and that is when you post this stuff on social media, people get really mad at you.
They do
over your. It's weird, right? Have you seen that too?
Oh. I mean, that's most of what I do. People get so upset about things. You have to. I sometimes have to be like, guys, we're talking about toys for guitar players, right?
Right. And also, like, I just wanted, I want to acknowledge that in this interview, and also just point out, I am not an expert in any of this stuff. I'm just another guitar player messing around with pedals. Sometimes I get the the order wrong on my pedal board. Sometimes I might like a pedal that you hate. You know what I mean? It's just these are just kind of opinions. You know, I'm not like trying to suggest you got to do it the way I do it or my way is the right way, or you know what I mean? It is really funny though. Like I've noticed that like people get, it's almost like it's like sports or something. You know what I mean? It's like it's weird. It generates a strange, and it's not most people, of course. Most people are like, oh, cool, but like you know, you get that handful of comments on your Instagram feed, like, what are you talking about? That's going to throw your whole rig out of phase, idiot.
Right. Or like, I tried that overdrive and it sounded terrible. And I'm like, oh, but that doesn't matter at all. Like one of my friends is Brian Fallon from the Gaslight Anthem, and everything that he picks, I can't make sound good at all. Like almost every part of his rig, I'm like, oh, I tried that and it didn't sound good. But I listen to him play it, it sounds fantastic.
Sounds great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, so who am I to say? I'm like, I thought that wasn't a very good overdrive, but guess what? I'm wrong because you sound great playing it.
Yeah. And it really is. I mean, these things are really, it's so individual and, you know, at times genre specific and you know, and let's not forget your tone's really in your hands.
It's in your hands and in your pedals. That's where all the tone is. Yeah. I just realized what hat I was wearing when I said that. That's funny.
Oh yeah. Nice. Nice.
I was like, wait a minute.
Does he get a piece of your podcast revenue? Because you are hyping Fallon today, man.
No, he doesn't. Okay, maybe he does.
Yeah.
But yeah, so we've done a few other podcasts. I saw that you did my friend Chris's from that one time on tour. You're hitting the podcast circuit, man. You're really going for it.
Been doing a lot of them. Yeah, it's fun. I really enjoy, you know, I've done my own podcast for so long that I love being a guest on other people's podcasts because I can just show up at, you know, 10 a.m. and turn my computer on and I don't have to think about organizing questions or, you know what I mean? There's no homework. You just show up. It's all on you, buddy.
Well, I wanted to talk to you about your podcast because I'm a big fan of it. You introduced me to a ton of artists. And also one of my favorite podcasts, Cocaine and Rhinestones.
Oh, yeah.
I wouldn't have found that without listening to your show.
Oh, cool.
What made you want to start your podcast?
I mean, I started it around like I was putting out a record. And so really that was sort of the gist of it, was just to have a way to promote the record that I was putting out at that time. That was back in like 2013. And then I just discovered after doing a few of them that I enjoyed it. And I dip in and out of it. You know, it's a one-man show. So there are points where I just get too busy with other stuff and I'll let it sit kind of dormant. I've been kind of on hiatus, you know, most of this year since the spring, but I've just started working on lining up some fresh interviews. So I've gotten a bunch of good pitches, in recent months. So I'm following up on some of those and I'm going to have some fresh episodes here pretty soon.
That's super cool. And you're a very, you know, for a guy who I don't think people think of as an interviewer, you're a great interviewer. You're very responsive and you ask the questions that I want to hear answers to oftentimes. So it's really awesome.
Thanks, man. I appreciate that. You know, but when I started, I'd never interviewed anybody and I was terrible at it. I just kind of always went from the viewpoint of like, how would I want to be interviewed? You know? Mm-hmm. Because, you know, as a musician, you wind up, if you're lucky and you get to put out records and do that whole thing, you wind up being asked pretty much the same, like, handful of questions forever by journalists, you know what I mean? And most journos are not, you know, what we are, which is like guitar player, hyper obsessed music fans that want to know all these details about, you know, the gear and the songwriting and process and all that, you know what I mean? So, I don't know. I just always try to go at it from more of like, you know, from the idea of like, what would I want somebody to ask me? Mm-hmm. I guess.
Yeah. I always just tried to make it a conversation, you know, I just want to talk but my favorite podcasts are always the ones where I'm a fly on the wall, you know, listening to the other people have this conversation and learning things and in a really natural way. You know, you learn about people. Sorry, you probably hear a winding machine back there. For all the listeners, I'm at the String Joy factory recording this episode, so it's a little different than the normal episode. But
wait, so you're part of a company that makes strings? Is that what you said?
Yeah, that's correct.
Okay, I had heard years ago. See, maybe you can clear this up. I heard that there were like two companies that actually made strings in this world, and that all the brands are just use those two companies or something like that. Is there any truth to that rumor?
So that is not true, but
Okay.
it's sort of true in that there are way more string brands than there are string manufacturers. Like way more.
Right.
But there are around most of the companies, and this I don't want to say this across the board because there are companies in other places doing decent work or even really great work, but most of the high quality manufacturers are based in the US.
Okay.
And so in the United States, there's around a dozen or so actually manufacturing strings.
Okay.
So there, I believe actually my partner Scott has like made maybe it's published it, maybe it's not out yet, a blog post about this topic because we get that all the
Interesting.
time.
Yeah.
So we're probably the newest manufacturer, I think. We've been making our own stuff. I don't remember exactly when we started, but probably at least 5-ish years, somewhere in that ballpark.
And do you manufacture for other brands or just for yourselves? Okay.
We've gotten asked to do it for some other brands, including one of the larger brands. There's one large brand. I don't want to like throw people under the bus or anything, and it's not a bad thing. White labeling is not a bad thing. It's just a thing.
Yeah.
But there's one major brand in the U.S. that doesn't manufacture for their own or themselves, and they hit us up, but we just didn't have the capacity. I mean, we're basically selling everything we can make currently. So
right.
At some point, maybe we will. But I don't see in the near future that being a possibility. But never say never, of course.
Interesting.
Yeah. So
this would be a prime time for me to acknowledge that I've been a long time D'Addario user. Just throwing that out there.
I knew you were going to say that. And of course, they are the biggest.
Oh, really? Oh, okay.
They're the biggest manufacturer in the world, I believe, of strings.
Oh, wow.
I'm fairly confident in saying they're the biggest in the world. And
I take back what I said earlier about your tone being all in your hands. It's of course in your strings, which is there you go.
I have to edit this part out anyway. But no, they honestly they do a great job, and we've pointed people to them for things that we don't do. But Scott and I were just talking about that literally right before this. There's something somebody wanted, and we're like, we don't do that. Get from D'Addario, you know.
Right. So, do you guys? I'm not I'm not actually. I haven't played your strings. So, like, do you guys have a specific focus?
Well, we want to do everything, but we're primarily electric guitarists. So
okay. Yeah.
Obviously, that's the main thing. We actually started as a custom string. This has just turned into a big commercial.
That's okay, man.
We started it as a custom shop. That was our origins. So Scott's upset. The listeners have heard this, but you haven't. The origin story is Scott was buying sets of strings and combining them together into different things for different purposes for years and years. And he was just doing that on his own. And he was like, this is so wasteful. Why isn't there a company I can just go order what I want? And so he decided, how about I make that company? So he did. And that was at the time we were getting them from several suppliers. And sometimes there was like, oh, we like the plain strings from these people and the wound strings from these people, and putting it all together.
Yeah.
And that's where our 10 to 48 set came from.
Okay.
And so once we started doing that, we realized how picky we were. And eventually one of our manufacturers got so tired of us, he just said, I'm going to sell you these two machines, and never talk to me again. And so that was, I think, 5-ish years ago. And yeah, that's the nutshell version. So custom stuff is where we started, but now we've just really, really focused on being crazy about quality and trying to make the absolute best stuff we can. That's really all it is.
As an aside to the string conversation, I have a giant box at my studio where I keep all my strings. But really what it is it's like a giant box of string packs that I've taken one or two strings out of.
Yeah. Yes.
You know what I mean?
Yeah,
So like,
yes.
somebody needs to come up with a good way of organizing that. Cause I think that's like every guitar player probably has that somewhere in their house, you know? It's like, you know, it's just a bunch of packs with all the G strings and B strings missing, you know?
Pretty much. Yeah. 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 That is, you know, it's kind of funny because some people are like, oh, you own a string company. You probably have unlimited fresh strings. I'm like, I don't like changing my strings any more than anybody else does. So no, I
Right.
procrastinate just as much as everybody else. So.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I break them and end up with sets exactly like what you're describing.
Yeah.
We end up sending ours to our scrap here, because obviously we end up with a lot of scrap when you're starting and finishing, you know, setting up machines and whatever. We send them to a company here in Nashville called Strings for Hope, and they take them and turn them into jewelry. And their emphasis on helping women that have been in like abusive situations and things like that. So it's pretty cool that there's an option for those old used sets. So Strings for Hope, if you're listening.
Yeah, I should send my box there. Yeah, totally.
Yeah. They could always use it, but great people.
Cool.
But anyway, that was a String Joy commercial section of this. Scott, I'm going to be expecting a healthy check this.
Yes.
But so we talked a lot on Chasing Tone about the guitar rig and how it's evolved over the years and all that kind of stuff. But more what I would like to dive into here is you, and like we dabbled into the songwriting stuff towards the end of the Chasing Tone podcast. People can go listen to that if they want. But what I've wondered is, you know, how has your approach to songwriting changed over the years? Because you've been in so many different projects, and now you're largely driving your solo records. But back when you were in No Use for a Name, which I'm a huge fan of, by the way. So,
right on.
You know, I imagine the processes look different band to band and project to project.
Sure.
So how does that vary?
Sure. Yeah, I mean it's different with every songwriter, you know, and like in most of the bands that I've been in that people know me from, like Foo Fighters or No Use for a Name, or certainly the Gimme Gimmes, which was all cover songs. But in those bands, like I'm not the songwriter. I wasn't the songwriter in No Use for a Name, and I'm not the songwriter in the Foo Fighters. You know what I mean? So I feel like I've been lucky to get to work with people over the years, like Dave and Tony and other folks who are really great songwriters. And you know, you just, from years of being intimately working with with folks, you sort of see what they do and kind of where they put their emphasis and what they think about. Like, you know, with Tony was all about the melody, you know, so he would bring in songs that were pretty done, you know, but then we would all kind of have a hand in arranging them. Like I remember, and I only made 2 records with No Use, but my memory of those records was like, he would bring in demos, you know, he'd like make a 4-track demo. I mean, it's not unlike what Dave does, you know, it's like Dave usually makes a recording that's kind of the starting point, and then we all kind of learn it, and it winds up going wherever it goes. But yeah, that coupled with, you know, all sorts of things, you know, I kind of started, it was really from my time in No Use was really inspired me to even start writing songs. I really didn't write songs prior to that.
Okay.
So that kind of got me thinking about that side of the whole thing. You know, I was really just, I don't know, I loved playing guitar. I was never very studious with anything. I just loved being in bands. And so that was always, I was just always the guitar player, you know, and I loved it. And then it was around the time I was in No Use that I kind of got inspired to kind of start to write. And then for a long time, I feel like I just kind of wrote lyrics as an afterthought, just because you had to have some lyrics, but I didn't really put a lot of emphasis into that. And certainly over the years, I've put more work into that side of it. But it always starts by noodling around on a guitar, you know, and you hear a little melody in your head, or maybe it's a melody with a phrase, and that becomes the chorus or something, or you come up with a little riff that sounds good. And yeah. And also like thinking about like drum grooves and stuff, and how much that can really impact, you know, how people hear your riff, you know?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. It's different every time, but it's usually starts probably with me and an acoustic guitar sitting on my couch watching TV, just noodling, and then like going like, "Ooh, what's that?" And I grab my phone and record it, and then flesh it out at a later date.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting how technology has changed our processes. We all pretty much use our phone in some capacity in the songwriting. I haven't talked to anybody in the last, I don't know, 8 years that hasn't said, "Oh yeah, I put the note in my phone, or I use the voice memo to just quickly log that idea." And I know 100% that I've caught a lot of melodies, a lot of riffs, just like, "Oh, I don't have anything to oh, I got my phone. Let me just get this real quick so I don't forget."
Sure.
To the point where I actually recorded something on my phone, and I thought, well, I was listening back, it was on a resonator guitar, and I thought, this doesn't sound too bad. Let me put it in the DAW and see what happens.
Yeah.
I put it in the DAW, and then it became the core of the song. Like the mic'd up phone recording a resonator guitar is like the main focal point of that song, which is so weird to think about because when I was recording, when I was younger, I had all these fantasies of having this big epic recording studio with all the 1176s and all the API and all the blah blah blah, and I was like, because that's what you got to have to make a record, right? That's just not the case anymore.
Yeah, I mean, you still have to have somebody, or you have to know how to use it. That's my problem. I don't know how to use it, any of the technology to make anything sound good. But yeah, I know what you mean. I mean, certainly you could make an album with what we've got right here, easy. Mm-hmm. Your laptop and a mic, and you're off to the races. But yeah, it's really interesting with that. Like, I've got a new record coming out here pretty soon that Jaron from Cadillac 3 produced, and we've been working on it, kind of chipping away at it for a little while. And last summer 2021, I was up in Santa Barbara quarantining because I had COVID, and one of the songs that we had recorded, he wanted me to record an acoustic guitar thing in the guitar solo, and I was nowhere near a recording studio or anything, and didn't have any gear with me, so I just recorded it. He said, "Just record it on your iPhone, send it to me." So I recorded it on my iPhone, sent him that, and that became the guitar solo in the song.
Wow.
And like you listen,
recording?
Yeah, that actual, he just popped it in there and put a little razzle dazzle on it, and that became the thing. And it's cool because it's got a vibe. It definitely like has a vibe. Like it's like a choice you wouldn't have made if you're sitting in a beautiful studio. You know what I mean?
Absolutely not.
And we could have redone it, but we didn't need to. It sounded great. It was totally cool. So yeah, I mean I think that kind of thing happens a lot nowadays.
This kind of goes around to podcasting too, because I try to have absolutely the best audio quality I can. We all do. We try to make it as listenable as possible. But right now, you might be hearing a machine in the background. Sometimes you got to adapt to the environment. And some of my favorite episodes are actually ones that I recorded in the back of vans or buses with my iPhone. And that's all I had. That's all I'm like, I'm in this situation. I'm talking to this person. I have a podcast. They're willing to do it. We have an hour or two. I'm not going to drive home and get like my full rig. I'm just going to use what I have. And listening back, it takes some massaging. It takes some working, sometimes by me, sometimes by Nick. Shout out Nick for editing this podcast. But I listen back to those, and some of those are my favorite episode because it captures the environment that you're in. And it's not necessarily the best sound quality, but as long as you can hear what everybody's saying, the people tapping on the van saying, "Hey, time for sound check," and all that, like, adds to it to me. I don't know if I want every episode to be that way, but those are my favorite episodes ultimately.
Yeah, the only thing that drives me nuts on a podcast is when the two people talking have really different level microphones. To where when one person talks, you have to crank it up to hear it, and then when the next person talks, you're like, "Whoa!" You got to roll the volume up, off. That drives me insane. But it's funny because I have this little studio not too far from where I live, and when I rented it, and it's just I call it a studio. It's just a room that I stuck a bunch of gear in. in a kind of industrial part of town, so you can make a racket. But what I didn't realize when I rented it is I'm literally right next to like a garbage truck depot.
Oh,
So all day long, giant garbage trucks are rolling in and out of there, and it's like rattles the windows, and like so in every interview since I've rented this place, you just hear garbage trucks drive by throughout the whole thing. There's nothing you can do about it.
yeah. Oh man, that's taken me back. So when I started this show, I recorded it on my iPhone using what was new at the time was recording remote. That was not a thing in 2014, 2015 that people had heard of. And so there was an app called Ringer that I used to use for years. And it was literally like me with my iPhone earbuds, and I was recording it at my day job at the time. And trains are going by, and there's all kinds of weird sounds, but like it's just you gotta use what you have and just kind of
Yeah,
with it,
totally.
I mean,
I think that one of the first ones that what's that?
I was just saying, how do you put records out back in the day? They just DIY, man. Did it yourself.
One of the first interviews I ever did was Nick from the Hives, guitar player. And he was, we did it over Skype, which was real glitchy. That was like in 2013. And he was at a festival somewhere in Europe. So like, those like are structured. He's like probably in like a tent or a porta cabin or something trying to do it. And you just hear like the racket of the festival, you know what I mean? But it's like, who cares? It adds to the vibe. It's cool.
Yeah. As long as you can hear it, that's all that matters. And yeah. And now, I mean, it's so funny because over lockdown, everybody was, having Zoom meetings and everything. And prior to lockdown, almost every single guest, I'd have to give them the rundown of here's how you do it. Here's how you record. Here's what this is going to look like. Here's what we do if we get disconnected, blah, blah, blah. And I've like never had to give that anymore. It's just everybody, after that happened, everybody's like, oh, yeah, I know how this works.
Totally. Yeah.
It's wild. So I have another question for you. I have a friend named Dewey. Actually, he's the guy who does this podcast on my sweatshirt. Yeah. We're wearing everybody's clothes today. He used to play in a band called Portugal the Man, which a lot of people are familiar with.
Sure.
He is now more known for his podcast because he's been out of the band for a long time. And he was always telling me stories about the craziest things, he's gotten to experience. He would have thought that he got to experience them as a musician. Instead, he's experienced them as a podcaster. You have done both. Now, you're playing in one of the biggest bands in the world, so it's a little bit different situation. But have there been any situations through podcasting that you're like, I never thought I would have got to talk to this person?
I mean, a bunch. Yeah, certainly a bunch of the interviews that I've gotten to do over the years tick that box. Merle Haggard and Dwight Yoakam and oh God, I mean, so many. Like even like when I interviewed Mike Ness, like that was the first time I toured in various bands, opening for Social Distortion. Like the first time I opened for Social Distortion was like in 1990. And I was such a big fan that like I have a picture of me and Mike from back then. And then in various other things, either on the Warped Tour or even just opening for Social D back before I was in Foo Fighters. And then Social D has come out on tour with us. So I've been around Mike a bunch of times over the years, but that was the first time I ever got to sit down and have a long conversation with him.
Wow.
Oh, sorry. Hold on one sec.
No worries.
Yeah, not very pro to be in the room with your phone.
Oh man, that's a landline. I haven't seen one.
I know. I can turn my cell phone off, but my landline just still rings. Anyway, so yeah, it's so many. I would say I probably, on the whole, had many, many more crazy experiences being in a band over the years, and those kind of pinch me moments where you can't believe you meeting somebody or playing at this venue or on this stage or whatever, just crazy stuff. Mm-hmm. But yeah, the podcast is I've gotten to meet so many people through it that I just probably would have never crossed paths with, both famous and not famous, people putting out their first record and legends that have been making records for 50 years,
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, yeah, for me, I'm always having that. I'm having one right now. Like, this is awesome for me. I've been a fan for a long time. So,
well, we've been friends since last week. So, you know what I mean? This is old hat.
This is true. I'm not even phased anymore. It's all, yeah. Oh,
that's
yeah,
right.
My friend Chris from the Foo Fighters, it's fine.
That's right. If we do another interview, you're going to be bored. Like, oh God, this fucking guy again.
I can't believe I have to talk to him again.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Seriously.
Nah, not at all. So you touched on it there. You've had crazier experiences in the band. What's the first one that comes to mind that you're like really astonished by?
I mean, the first one was my first audition. You know what I mean? Walking into the room, I'd never met Dave or Nate or Taylor, yeah, it was mind blowing, just to be in a room with those guys and with my guitar in my hand, was incredible. But right away, when I joined the Foo Fighters, it was right before the third record came out. So the third record had been made, but it wasn't released yet. And so I got to join the band for what you call the promo tour, where we went out. It wasn't like a normal tour. You're just traveling around the world doing interviews and playing on TV shows and like going to radio stations and just doing all that stuff. Mm-hmm. And yeah, it was amazing, like just all of a sudden in this, I don't even know how to describe it. It was like a dream come true that all of a sudden you're just living at 1,000,000 miles an hour and, getting to know the guys in the band and everybody on the crew, and the whole situation was just like, yeah, it was pretty overwhelming. Hey, hold on one sec, because my cat is banging at the door.
Okay.
Sorry. Phones, cats, it's just a mess around here.
I love it.
All right, come on in, buddy. Come on in. Oh, boy. I'm in the part of my house where we keep our the cat food and whatnot.
I see.
And so, if I'm in here for too long with the door closed, these guys start to get restless.
They're like, hey, obviously I'm malnourished. Look at me.
That's right. That's right. That's right. I like to play Fender Telecasters. That's what she's trying to say.
What's the cat's name?
That's Go-Go.
Hi, Go-Go. How's it going?
Yeah. We have like an animal farm around here these days.
Nice. Well, I was going to ask you right before that. I actually should know the answer to this question, and I don't. I just know that you got into the Foo Fighters. I don't know how that happened. How did you even get that audition?
Yeah, it was a friend of mine knew a woman a lawyer that worked at the same law firm as Foo Fighters lawyer, and was able to get my name basically thrown in the hat. And it was just that, it was just that, like, I just went in cold and auditioned, and then came back a week later, auditioned again, and then it was off to the races.
Wow. What did the audition itself look like? What did you do in the audition?
First one was pretty brief. It was, if it was even an hour, maybe it was an hour. And we played like 3 or 4 songs, maybe a couple more, and kind of just talked a little bit. And they were in the middle of doing like a bunch of auditions that week. So it was sort of like, you had to keep it moving. So that was my slot. And then they called me a week later and said, come down again. And that audition was longer. We played a lot more songs. And then they officially told me I got the gig the next day. So yeah, wow. It was awesome. Yeah.
It had to be like extremely surreal. Pinch me. Like, am I awake right now? This is wild.
Yeah. No, it was like I said, it was really a dream come true. There was really no band on the planet at that point that I would have preferred to be in.
I mean, at any point. Really, right?
Yeah, at any point, yeah. But certainly right then, I was just like, they were like my favorite, I mean, it was so yeah, it was great. Now I'm sorry. Now the other cat seems to be fighting at the door. Hold on. They get jealous.
They're like, hey, I need attention.
Yes. Okay, here we go. Come on. You can come in too. Oh yeah, this is the other one.
Oh, hello. Who are we talking to now?
This is Whiskey.
Oh, I like that. Whiskey.
Yeah. Whiskey and Go-Go.
Go. Uh-huh. I see what you're doing there.
Yeah.
What kind of guitar does Whiskey like?
He's more of a Les Paul man.
Okay. I got that vibe from him. Yeah. Definitely.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
He's the big one. He's these cats are insane. They eat more than any other cats I've ever seen. And
they're both big.
They're gigantic. Yeah, they're huge. Yeah.
Yeah, well,
if you could see what I see, they're like fighting on the floor in front of me in my office right now.
They're like, no, you're the big one. No, I'm the big one.
Yeah.
No, Telecasters are better. No, Les Pauls are better.
Exactly. Yeah.
So you're known for the Telecaster. We talked about that pretty extensively. In the interview, and I was thinking at the time, but we segued into something else. You've got to have other favorites, though.
Oh, sure. I mean, my first guitar I ever got, I don't remember if we talked about this on the other podcast or not, but my first guitar I ever got, well, the first guitar I started to learn guitar on was my brother Mike's Epiphone acoustic, right?
Okay. Mm-hmm.
So I would take that to my guitar lessons. And then at some point, after I'd been taking lessons for a minute, my mom bought me a Takamine, which was like a explorer shape, but small.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
And I played that for a couple of years. And then a kid at my school, this guy, Jay Duff, who had a half pipe in his backyard that we used to go skate all the time. He had a Les Paul that he was selling. So I sold my Takamine and my mom covered the rest. And I bought that off him. And that was in 10th grade. And that was really the only guitar I had until like maybe halfway through my time in No Use for a Name. I got another Les Paul.
Okay.
Then I had two. So I really I was so Les Paul centric, and Gibson centric for so long because, humbuckers and rock and roll, it's like kind of, go together. Mm-hmm. And I just, that was the only guitar I had. So I just played that to death. And even when I first joined Foo Fighters, that was still that black Les Paul that I bought off Jay in 10th grade was still my main guitar for the longest time. And I am proud to say that it currently sits in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame.
Whoa, no way.
I mean, and I don't mean to be like boastful or whatever, but it does make me really happy. Like when that whole thing went down, our management said, "Oh, you got to pull a guitar to send. They'll have like an exhibit or whatever." And I was like, I don't even need to think about it. Like I'm putting that one in there. I don't take it on the road anymore. It sits in my garage. I just don't want to risk anything ever happening to it because out of any guitar I have, that one has the most sentimental value. It's like every chip all over it, all the wear and tear on the neck, all of it was done. I did that, Mm-hmm. I relicked it by years and years of, punk rock shows and sweaty van tours and whatever, playing in dive bars.
I love it.
Yeah.
That's got to be surreal in and of itself. Like, just to think, I have a guitar in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. If you had told 16-year-old Chris that, what would he have said?
I mean, those types of things, all that kind of stuff. It's like you don't even really think about it when you're a kid. It's just it wasn't part of my dream,
Right.
Because, the only thing I thought, I just wanted to be on stage somewhere playing loud rock and roll music. It was mm-hmm. like pretty much that was it. I didn't really fantasize much beyond that.
Yeah. Yeah. But I think that's what's cool though, is that you're a great example of what happens when you do chase it down, because I think it's more common nowadays to hear the message of like, you should try to pursue something that you're interested in. You should try to go after something you care about. That's something that's talked about way more on podcasts and on the internet in general. That message is out there more. Back when you were growing up, and even when I was growing up, that wasn't the message. The message was go to college, get a job that you can tolerate, retire when you're 60 or 70, and then you can live life. Not live your life and just live your life. I know what you mean, but it's really tough. Like I have kids, I have 3 boys and my oldest is in college now and my other 2 are in high school. And it's like, it's hard as a parent because you want your kid to have big dreams and everything, but you also want them to be safe. And you know what I mean? So it's this you're trying to have that balance. Like, yeah, man, do what makes you happy, but make sure it pays well. You know what I mean? And that was the thing. I mean,
I don't think, I think kind of in the back of my mind, I just always thought like, I'm going to go for it but probably it won't work. And probably at some point I'll have to, come back down to earth or whatever. I don't know. I can't even put myself in my own mindset at that age much because I don't know. It's easy to look back when you've had some success and go like, yeah, I worked hard and I did this and it was all part of a big plan, but it wasn't. I was just fucking around. I made a bunch of dumbass mistakes in life. And thankfully things kind of worked out, but not because I was like, working hard on my craft. I don't know. I just loved playing guitar and played in a series of bands and one thing led to another. I don't know. I can't even work it out myself. Certainly there's no path for anybody else to follow. You know what I mean?
No, but at any point you could have said no,
Sure. And I had those points. So there were moments, I remember there were moments throughout my young adult life that I did think about like, maybe it's time to do something else. And I'm glad I didn't act on it really.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I think that what I like to talk about on this show is it wasn't really possible even when I was growing up, really. But what's so amazing about the world that we're growing up in now is that you can kind of do both to varying degrees. I had a full-time job when I started doing this, and I really wanted to be able to do it all the time and be engrossed in music full time. But in my head, I was like, nah, I'm a mechanic. I'm never going to be doing anything but busting my knuckles on things,
Right.
But if you put in, some work into things that you enjoy, you can actually, it's what's great about the internet is you can do it on the side until it doesn't have to be on the side anymore.
Right.
Know?
Right.
And that just wasn't an option.
I would say
before.
You being a mechanic, that's like adds another extra thing for people to want to bring you out on their tour because the van breaks down. You know what I mean? That's a good skill set to have.
Now, as long as it's not anything that was manufactured after 2015, I can probably handle it.
Well, I remember like when I was in No Use, we bought this used airport shuttle to tour in. First we had like an Econoline. Sure. That had like these electric doors that opened up. I think it had been used maybe to pick up like I'm not sure. It was like like something. Had something. Yeah, it had these electric doors and it was it was a Econoline, but it had like a pop top. It was a great little tour van. But it was getting older and we sold it. We sold it to the Swingin' Utters, and I think maybe on the first time they took it out, the engine blew up and it died. So we sold them a lemon. But thanks for taking that off our hands, boys. And then we bought a used airport shuttle, and it basically never worked. I mean, we took it maybe on one or two tours, and it would just break down over and over all tour long. And I remember the last time we took it out, they drove up from San Jose. I was living in San Francisco. They drove up to San Francisco, picked me up at my apartment, and we were driving up north somewhere. So we're going across the Bay Bridge, and just the engine starts smoking. It just dies. Like we haven't even gotten out. We've just barely gotten out of the city. You know what I mean? And it's already died. Yeah. So in our band at that time, it was really Rory was the only guy in the band that had like any idea how to like change the oil in a van or like pop the hood open and see what's going on. So it always fell to him, sadly.
Yeah, I've been that guy. I've definitely been that guy, not on tour really, but in other situations where everyone's like, what's a wrench? And I'm like, oh boy, here we go. We're going to I'm going to be under the van again. I'm going to be under the tractor again. I'm going to be under. Oh, I'm having flashbacks. Woo. So here's one. Since you are like as veteran as it gets when it comes to touring, and there's a lot of touring musicians or aspiring touring musicians that listen to their show. What are some like weird tips or tricks for the road that people haven't really thought of?
I'd say a good one is pack light. I remember the very first tour I ever did, I brought like, 4 pairs of shoes and 3 jackets. And like, I just brought like everything with me thinking, well, we're going to be in some snow and then we're going to be in and that was just a nightmare. I just brought way too much stuff. So yeah, pack light.
Mm-hmm.
And the other one, I guess, would be keep it light in the van. You got to be able to hang with whoever you're on tour with in tight little spaces, and you're probably not all going to be best friends. So keep it light.
Keep it light.
Respect your area. Yeah, and clean up your zone. Man, if you bring in your McDonald's Happy Meal and your bag of chips and your fucking 32-ounce Big Gulp or whatever, take that shit out of the van when you get to the next stop.
Right.
Throw out your trash.
Throw it out.
Yeah.
I've been in some interesting vans where I was like,
yeah,
this is how we choose. Huh? You didn't have to keep that wrapper there. I know you didn't have to. You know why?
Yeah.
Because I could see a garbage can 30 feet away from this van.
Yeah.
I know you could throw it away.
Well, it's funny on van tours, like people tend to kind of pick out your spot, and stick to it. There's a funny thing that happens. I've seen this. I mean, it's pretty much like every tour you ever go on. People tend to like, this is the part of the bench seat that I always sit on. And then that's where their little, they kind of build their little home in there,
Right.
stow their things in different places. And so, yeah, you gotta be mindful of everybody else. Shared space.
One of the best tour hacks that I've ever heard, and I feel like I have to bring it up every so often when this conversation comes along, because it's actually a theory that I had, even though I never went on tour. And the band, He Is Legend. I don't know if you're familiar with them, but they're a pretty heavy rock and roll band. They intentionally try to go to, when they're scheduling their tour, they try to make sure that there's several stops at KOA campgrounds along the way.
Yeah.
So you can go there, you can crash for way cheaper than a hotel.
Sure.
Everybody can take a shower, stretch out a little bit.
Yeah.
And they're generally close-ish to, or at least on the way to the next town. And I was like, man, why doesn't anybody else? I've never heard of anybody taking advantage of the KOA. So there's another one.
You know what?
The KOAs.
When I interviewed Brent Cobb, he said that they do that a lot on their tours.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So that's a really good idea.
Yeah.
I've never done it myself, but yeah, how nice would that be? Just to kind of like, you could bring like your fishing pole and, who knows?
I mean, at least just get a little space for a little while.
Totally. Yeah. Because that is definitely something you don't have on when you're touring on a budget. You're sharing hotel rooms, you're packed into a van. Yeah. Space is good.
It's a rough go of things.
I used to, what I used to love when I was in No Use? I would love when you would meet people. Let's say you're on tour and wherever, you're out in Texas or somewhere, and you meet some folks in Austin, and then they'd be like, hey, we're going to the Dallas show too. Who you want to ride with us? And you just kind of break away from the touring party for an afternoon with some locals that maybe take you to somewhere cool, so then a good place to go eat or whatever. Maybe a cool thrift store or something, cool record store, guitar shop. And that was always really fun.
Yeah.
Yeah. Go see some of that.
I was going to say, that's my favorite thing to do when friends come through town. I love, like, when my touring friends are coming through town now, because that didn't used to be a thing I could say. I didn't have touring friends, but now I got touring friends.
Yeah.
And when they come through Portland, I'm like, I'm your boy. I got wheels. I got multiple wheels. Like, my wife and I will bring separate cars. We'll go all out. We'll hit all the pizza spots. We'll go to everything. We'll do. That's like my favorite thing in the world to do, is to show people the cool spots in town when they're coming.
Yeah, it's great, because then you get to, there's nothing better than actually getting out and seeing everywhere that you go. Which is really easy to not do. Like, so for people that don't tour, it's surprisingly easy to kind of sleep through the day, and you wind up seeing a lot of hotels and nightclubs and stuff, but you can miss all the other stuff. It's like, for me, that's like half the reason you want to be out on the road, is to go see the sights and experience the local color.
Absolutely. The local cuisine, especially. That's the most important part.
Oh yeah.
So we're going to get in trouble with the managers if we don't actually backtrack a little bit and talk about, we were supposed to talk about the new record, which I heard the single off of. This sounds awesome. I'm I'm a big fan of your other solo stuff too. So that didn't come as
thank
much
you.
of a surprise to me. You want to talk about that a little bit? What did that process look like, and when's it coming out? Hit us with those details.
Yeah, so the stuff that I've put out recently, the 2 songs that I put out was that song "Long Long Year" a few months ago, and then I put out a song called "Born and Raised" in September, and those are from a recording session I did with Vance Powell producing out in Nashville. So those are just standalone tracks, because around that same time I wound up starting a project where I made a whole record. With Jaron from Cadillac 3 producing. So that's a different thing that we're going to start putting songs out in, I think, January, somewhere around there, maybe end of January, something like that. So, yeah, it had been a minute, since I'd recorded any solo stuff. And so during the lockdown, I was just writing a lot and started putting together plans to go record. And I had an idea about recording a bunch of different songs with a bunch of different producers and just kind of putting out single tracks here and there. And then when I went and recorded a couple tunes with Jaron, we just kept recording more songs, and it just turned into a full length album. So that idea just, I just didn't wind up doing it. So I might still do that at some point or in some way. And I do like the idea of with DSPs and everything. I like the idea of just being able to put out single tracks, that aren't necessarily attached to a full length record.
Yeah.
But I do have this full length record coming out, and it'll be coming out. We'll be starting to put out tracks in the new year. So that was the product of maybe like 4 trips out to Nashville to record. And I would go out there and we'd record a few songs, and then I'd bring the stuff back to LA, and I'd record some extra guitar parts and maybe tweak on some of the vocals or something back here. And we just kind of pass stuff back and forth until we got it where we wanted it to be. But yeah, I'm really excited about it. I think the record came out great, and Jaron's an awesome producer, and he's an awesome songwriter, and really helped me a lot to get all these songs where they needed to be. And he put together an incredible crew of musicians that played on it. And it's cool, man. I'm really stoked. Can't wait for people to hear it.
That is very exciting. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. I had gotten things a little bit mixed up. I thought these 2 singles were off of that, but I didn't realize they were 2 separate sessions. Yeah.
Everybody thinks that because it's totally confusing. I mean, of course you thought that, because that would be the normal thing to do. You know what I mean? But yeah, I had recorded those 2 songs with Vance, and I just dug them, and I just didn't want them to like sit there and not get put out. You know what I mean? And I also wanted to put them out myself, because I hadn't put out my own music in so long, or any music in a minute, that just wanted to get a sense of kind of how it all works nowadays with the DSPs, and doing it yourself, and really being kind of hands-on with that side of it was super helpful. And then this record's coming out through a label, so it'll be more like a traditional release, but I feel like that whole process helped me to kind of figure out like what would be some good things to do, and some things that maybe we don't need to do,
Yeah. Yeah. It is really interesting how that has changed, over the years. 'Cause I just put out my first solo thing last year, and DistroKid supports this show. And so I kind of had to like talk to my guy over them, like, how does this work? And it's like, it can't be this straightforward, can it?
Yeah.
No, it actually kind of is. Like, that's hard for me to get my mind around, even still, that your average person has access to that kind of thing as easily as they do, which is amazing, really.
Yeah. No, it's amazing. It, as somebody that's been putting out records for a long time, that whole process has just changed so radically over the years. But it was really fun to do it. And you fill out like a pitch, to try to get some playlisting and stuff, and you just send it off, and you're like, there's no, like, you don't actually communicate with anybody. It either works or it doesn't, you know what I mean?
Right.
It's really strange, it's really unlike kind of like everything else I've ever experienced in this industry that's more like sort of personal relationship based. It seems to not have that component nearly as much,
Well, you know what? you would be a good person to try this, because I did it, but I'm obviously not really known as a musician per se. I'm known as a podcaster and a gear person. And so when I've had relationships with different record labels and different people over the years that were on labels, and I was like, hey, look, podcasts and streaming, they're the same thing basically. They're just different places. And in Spotify's case, they're not even different places. It's literally the same place. I was like, what if you put out a record as a podcast with a sponsor that you really liked, and as a way to kind of help compensate for the streaming royalties or lack thereof. And nobody, couldn't get anybody to bite on it. I really tried. And then finally I was like, you know what? Nobody else is going to do it. I'm going to do it. And so that's where I first put my record out, was on this show.
Really?
With a sponsor. And it was like, wow, I never thought I would make 2 cents off of my music ever. And I actually made a little bit of money off of my music.
Wow.
And I knew, as a guy who has a podcast already and an established musician, maybe that's a strategy worth exploring for you.
I know, that's really interesting. That is really interesting. And I hadn't thought of that at all. It did occur to me, how can I link my podcast up to my solo profile on the DSPs to try to help, to help, so the algorithm likes me more, basically. But I haven't put any effort into that either. So,
I don't know how to do that either. That should be a thing that should be possible.
Yeah.
So many people have both these days. So
it's really interesting. I mean, I'm not an expert on this stuff, and I just kind of follow it loosely like everybody else. So I don't know exactly how it all works, but like I played some guitar on this song that Hardy put together for his latest Hicks tape compilation.
Mm-hmm.
And that was like a while ago. So it shows up like in my Spotify profile, you know what I mean? That's like by far, it's got like millions of streams, you know what I mean? Whereas my solo music doesn't get anywhere near that. And I think that really helped, like, make the algorithm like me more or something, and gave me some good playlisting on the first track that I put out. I got into some good playlists that really helped move the needle in a huge way.
Yep.
So I don't know. It seems like nobody ever says, like, you don't have any like feedback to confirm that, but it's got to help, right?
Well, it has to, because essentially, your contribution to that is being seen by people who wouldn't have otherwise seen it, because just because of the nature of how they do the split. I'm not an expert either. I've done a little bit of digging into this, but it absolutely, that's why so many people are doing collaborations. I even got an article sent to me the other day talking about how featuring is kind of dead. Like, you still feature technically, but they'll call it like a collab or a co-write, or they don't call it. They rarely call it a feature anymore. Like, sometimes,
interesting,
but not very often. And it's partially because of that, because it's mutually beneficial to both parties, so that it hits both places, basically. So there's definitely you're onto something there. There's definitely something.
Okay. Mm-hmm. Well, Beyonce, if you're listening, I'm available for some guitar work. You know what I'm saying?
Beyonce, if you're listening, I'm available.
Let's get those algorithms cooking.
Yeah, let's do it. Well, dude, we're getting down to the last few minutes of the podcast, and I have a couple classic questions I like to get into to wrap this thing up. But before I do that, I like to give the guests the stage. You can say anything you want to say to a couple thousand people, and shout out your grandma or whatever you want to do.
Yeah, well, if anybody out there listening is out here on the West Coast, I've got a bunch of shows coming up, opening a bunch of shows in December for Social D, and then doing a few of my own in Santa Barbara, Santa Cruz, Venice, Yucca Valley. And I think that's all of them. Is that all of them? Anyway, go to my website, chrisshiflettmusic.com. Check it out. Or you can, look me up on social media, whatever. But all that stuff is out there in December. So I'm going to be doing some shows.
Sweet. Nice.
And then, of course, I guess I should use this time to shamelessly plug my record that we mentioned, which will be coming out soon-ish.
Soon-ish. To a podcast near you. Oh, no.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. That's right. Revolutionizing the music industry. You heard it here first.
I think if Taylor Swift would do it, it literally would. But me, I'm not enough to move the needle. So
yeah. Well, hey, it's got to start somewhere, babe.
That's true. That's true. All right. Classic questions. Here we go. First one. What is your favorite Boss pedal?
Ooh, favorite Boss pedal. I mean, honestly, the one I've probably used more than any other over the years is the tuner.
Yeah, pretty common.
You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's not like it doesn't do anything funny to your tone, but it's pretty, it's pretty indispensable.
Important.
Yeah. I mean, right now on my board, I have one of the classic chorus pedal, the blue chorus.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like one of those Wazacraft ones.
Yep.
So it's even more, chorusy. In some way.
Absolutely. It's got
sounds great.
Yeah.
I don't know what the difference is. It just sounds like the chorus, but it's perfect. I've for many years tried a bunch of different chorus options and weird stuff and boutique-y things. And then that one was at our studio and I put it on my board. I was like, that's the sound right there.
Yeah. It is.
That's the chorus. Yeah.
That is the classic chorus sound. It's wonderful. It really is.
Yeah.
All right. Final question. This one gets a little bit dicey, but what is your favorite kind of pizza?
Ooh, God, if guitar, pedal, amp questions upset the listeners, this one is bound to it ruffle some feathers.
Yeah. All right. Here we go.
Honestly, the pizza that I look for always first, anywhere I go get a pizza, and this might offend you, is the Hawaiian pizza. It is my favorite pizza. Pineapple, Canadian bacon. Let's go.
You love the pineapple. I can't see. I can understand people who like the Hawaiian pizza if they like pineapple. I'm the guy who doesn't like pineapple. I don't like pineapple on anything.
Oh man.
So, well, I take that back. I like al pastor, and that requires pineapple.
Oh yeah.
But I don't want the chunks of pineapple. I understand it's got to be marinated in the juice. I get that, and it's wonderful.
Yeah.
But I don't want the chunks in there.
Yes.
Yeah. So
that's good advice through life. I don't want the chunks in there. You can take that anywhere, really.
And now I have a title for this episode. I don't want the chunks in there.
There's a pizza place that we long established in our house that Friday night was pizza night,
Absolutely.
And we strayed a bit from that because when my kids were little, it was pizza and a movie, we would all watch whatever, Harry Potter or whatever it was going to be. And so we still kind of, even though my kids are a little older now and we don't do the movie anymore, we still generally do Friday night pizza night. And there's a place here in LA called like Pitfire Pizza or something like that. It's pretty good. And it's in our delivery range. So we get from there a lot. And they have one called like a honey bear or something like that. And it's, I want to say it's like sausage and honey.
Oh yeah.
And little like peppers on there too. That's pretty good. Honey on your pizza. Yum.
It's surprisingly good. The first time I had it was in New York City. And I was like, I don't know about this. And I ate it. Nope, I was wrong. It's delicious.
Yeah.
A little bit of honey on the pizza, especially with some heat.
Look, I mean, you can't compare to a New York pizza. It's just that's the best in the world. We all know it. Let's just acknowledge that.
It's
but
true.
I am totally down and have been since this started popping up with these sort of modern fancy pants pizza, the smaller single serving mozza. It's like eating like a loaf of bread with some stuff on top. That I love that stuff.
Me too.
Love it.
Yep.
Yeah.
Like an Italian, like wood-fired style thing. Yeah.
Yeah, the whole thing. Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Give it to me. Yeah.
I'll make, I got a pizza stone years ago and my friend turned me on to this place here in LA that's like an Italian import shop. And you can go there and get ready-made dough and all like the Italian import cheeses and meats and sauces and things. It's great.
Mm-hmm.
So every now and again, I'll head over there and get a bunch of that stuff and we'll make pizzas here at home. And it works really well. I do it on my barbecue. I don't have like a pizza oven or anything, but I stick the pizza stone on my barbecue and crank that thing as just on high, and let it really get hot as it's crazy hot, and that works pretty good.
Yeah, I've done that.
It's a mess, but it's great.
It works really well. You might look into a uni. I don't know if you've seen one of those, but they're like,
is that like a mini one or something?
They're like a small-ish pizza. You can get them big, but they've got a pizza oven, and you literally like fill the hopper up with pellets, and it's like having a legit actual small version of a pizza oven. It's not as expensive or as cumbersome as like having a brick one built.
Yeah,
it's pretty legit. You should check it out.
Yeah,
it's pretty cool.
It's tough, I got a house full of like juicers and shit that we don't use, so I'm always a little like I never got like the green egg smoker or anything because I was just afraid that it's just gonna sit there. You know what I mean? Like I'll use it once and then you know what I mean. I got a whole house of stuff I used once.
Yeah, I do too, but I have a handful of them that have become staples. So
yeah,
you gotta risk it sometimes. I
have an amazing. I've got this amazing contraption that you stick a potato in and then pull a handle, and it makes perfectly cut French fries.
What?
And I think I've used it twice.
Oh, well,
but it's amazing. I mean, if you really were into French fries, this thing you just keep it on your counter and use it all the time. But I just like, how often am I going to actually sit there and double deep fry French fries?
That's the thing,
I mean?
And you got to double deep fry them.
You got to double deep fry them, which also is a colossal mess to clean up.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
People think making bacon's messy. Try double deep frying in your house.
You know how I make bacon?
How do you make
bacon?
And
it's my favorite way to make bacon. I bake it. I don't fry it. I bake it.
I've done that. It works great.
Yeah.
It's
works great.
Phenomenal.
Yeah. Cooks it. It's like there's way less mess, and it cooks it evenly. Instead of like, you ever notice when you like fry it on your stovetop, it's like raw and burnt at the same time half the time.
Yep. Yes.
Yeah. Pop that shit in your oven, 350 degrees for about 20 minutes, 25 minutes, depending on your oven. Perfect.
It's a great way to do bacon. And now you have a cooking tip on this podcast. Look at that.
That's right. And maybe a new title. It's a great way to do bacon.
It's a great way to do bacon. I don't know. Get the chunks out of there. It's still pretty good.
Yeah, true. Yeah.
Well, dude, thank you so much for this. This was a blast. I really enjoyed this conversation, maybe even more than the first one because I had you all to myself.
Oh, right on. Yeah, because we didn't have those other guys, talking about Arsenal and pedals and God knows what else.
Yeah. We got to the meat of the conversation.
That's right. Literally. Yeah. Awesome, man.
Thank you. Well,
thank you for having me.
Yep, absolutely. Welcome back anytime. Also, you just hit me up.
Thank you.
We'll do it. For Chris, this is Blake. And as always, folks, good luck and good tones. All right, folks, I hope you enjoyed that episode. I had a blast. And please make sure you check out Chris's solo work. It is phenomenal. I truly, truly loved it. And if you want to hear me talk to Chris more, you can go over to the Chasing Tone podcast, which is another show that I do every single week with my friends Richard Oliver and Brian Wampler from Wampler Pedals. We do that every single week. We don't usually have guests, but we also talk to Chris. So I'll put that down in the description in this video, and you can go check that out if you would like. It is very, very, very fun. All right, that's it for this episode. I hope you all enjoyed it. And again, if you need more, you can go to patreon.com/tonemob. $5 a month gets you a lot of extra content, So please check that out if you're able. And if not, please just share this with a friend. It would mean the world. And like, comment, subscribe, all that YouTube-y stuff. This YouTube stuff is new to me, so please help this channel grow. And I will continue doing my best to get the coolest people on here to nerd out with me. So until next time, folks, good luck and good tones.